Hi, everyone. This is Sandy Baumick, State Broadband Director here at Arizona Commerce Authority. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. We would give it another 4 or 5 minutes just to make sure that everyone is joining, and we'll start pretty soon. Thank you.
For those of you just joining us today, thank you so much for joining us at today's roundtable. We will be getting started here shortly in a few minutes. Thank you so much for your patience.
Everyone, thank you so much for your patience. Let's start for our third webinar for Leagues of Cities. This is regarding our continuous process to make sure our local government and local officials are aware about our broadband initiative here at the Arizona Commerce Authority. To recap from last two webinar, we talked about broadband deployment, kind of technology we are considering at this point, broadband funding, what we have deployed so far. I will recap everything in next few minutes, but feel free to ask any question. If you have anything, I'd be happy to help. So, to give you all a quick summary, a state recently received almost close to $1 billion. It's exactly $993 million from Infrastructure and Job Acts. So the BEAD funding that was basically distributed between all 50 states and US territories. $42.5 billion was allocated for broadband, and every state got a chunk of money based on how many unserved and underserved households they have in the state. So when we talk about unserved or underserved household, it was defined by the parameter which is set up by FCC. So for unserved household, if you live in a household or if you have number of household in your community which has less than 25 Mbps download and 3 Mbps upload, those houses are considered unserved. If you live in a household which has less than 100 Mbps upload and 20 Mbps download, those are considered underserved. I saw someone's hand is raised. I'll be happy to take that question. You can either type the question or my colleague Parla will be able to unmute you and we can take the question from there.
Well, you're able to unmute and ask the question if you'd like.
Okay. I don't see any question on the queue. We unmuted you. We'll just move forward. If you have any question, would be happy to take. So based on these parameters like unserved and underserved, state of Arizona received $993 million. As per the FCC broadband map, we have 318,000 addresses here in the state, and we have to cover all these 318,000 addresses with that $993 million. To summarize everything in a nutshell, in next few years, we will be going through a process, and I would say when I say next few years, so our planning, which we are going through right now, has total 18-month period, and we are right now in the planning process. This planning will basically put together all the guidelines and all the regulatory needs we need to put together to submit and plan to NTIA or Department of Commerce to execute this $1 billion grant program. So again, in a nutshell, we have $993 million to cover 318,000 households here in the state. So this grant program is a little bit different than any other grant program because this time this is not a direct competitive grant from between the communities. Any community which falls under underserved or unserved category will definitely be served or will have access to high-speed broadband internet. It's basically a competition between private carriers that who will partner up with you to apply for this grant funding. In last webinar, we talked about this in details. In today's webinar, we probably all have the same question in our mind, that how do we define if my community is unserved or underserved? So today's webinar, we are going to take a deep dive into the map which basically define that how many unserved and underserved address we have here in the state, and how to check your community if you are eligible for BEAD funding. So I will be sharing my screen and we will jump into the map. Okay, so I have two questions on the queue. Victoria, your question is, are Community Anchor Institute going to also be a priority to meet this goal? So great question. So community anchor institutes are definitely one of our priority, but after unserved or underserved. So once we serve within this $993 million, once we served all our unserved and underserved location, any leftover money can go towards the community anchor institute. And also, just to keep a distinction between the household and community anchor institute, any community anchor institute are getting connected through the BEAD funding need to be connected with 1 gig symmetrical. And we have a little bit more update on the community anchor institute. We'll discussing it more at the end of this webinar. A question from Peggy. Is the 100 threshold for underserved the provider plan number or actual speed received? So Peggy, if I got your question right, I think what you are asking, that 100 threshold for underserved is provider plan number or actual speed received? It's actual speed received. So the provider can offer multiple plan. If the provider is offering 50 by 3, 10 by 2, 100 by 20, at the end of the day, what's the max speed the provider is offering in that address is basically determining if it's unserved or underserved. We got a question from Jared. On the FCC website, the city of Tempe is shown as 100% coverage. However, there are many underserved communities in the city. The city of Tempe is committed to offering high-speed municipal fiber to all residents beginning of January of 2025. Given the city of Tempe is not shown as underserved, is Tempe eligible for BEAD funding? Great question, Jared. Unfortunately, if it shows if it shows served in the map, as of today, a town, city, or specifically the BEAD funding goes down into the address level. So to give you an example, Gerard, if there are 3,000 households in a community and 40 of them or 50 of them or 100 of them is not served, shows as not served into the map, you will definitely get funding for, actually, like the carriers who is applying for funding for that 100 household will get funding. But if everything shows served in that map, then definitely in that case, that address is not eligible for BEAD funding. However, there is a process coming up next year between March to June. It's called a state challenge process. If you feel that a carrier identified an address in a wrong way, that they are marking that address as served, but you know from a city perspective that it's not served, and you have evidence to submit, and we'll be releasing a guideline about it. You have evidence to submit against that, you are most welcome to submit that evidence, and we'll execute that to make sure that we are opening up those areas for BEAD funding. We talked about this challenge process into our last webinar. So without any further delay, let's jump into the map. So let's get into an interactive session here. Anyone from this call, please feel free to post your community's name. We would go through a real life checking process that how to determine if your community is eligible for BEAD funding. Please post it on the question and answer section or on the chat box. Okay. Great. We got a lot. So let's start with Buckeye. So this is the link. I'm going to copy and paste this link into the chat box. Please bookmark this link. This is the link basically you want to go anytime you have any question related to the BEAD funding. So coming back here. Okay, so we are in Buckeye. Now, anytime you're typing an address, you always want to make sure when you just say city name, it's not going to basically give you any parameters. So once you are in the city level or in a community level, you have to click on any household. Just click on any household and then click on these fixed broadband settings. This is very important. And you want to make sure that we have one hand raised. Let me see what's the question here. Parla, could you please unmute?
Hi, Gail, you're able to unmute so that you can speak.
Okay, great. So, our question is, go ahead. So our question is, providers that you're talking about advertise certain speeds, but that isn't necessarily what is being delivered to the residents of Payson. So I was just wondering if somebody could speak to that.
Of course, of course. We will definitely talk more about this at the end of this presentation. And that's what I said. We actually talked about a lot about the challenge process in our last presentation. And the challenge process is if you know in your community, and I always emphasize on this saying that you know your community better than us. So if you know there is a provider in your community, just to give you an example, and you know that they promised a price tier, like a speed tier of 120, 100 Mbps download and 20 Mbps upload, but that's not the speed you are getting into your households and businesses, you will be able to file a challenge as a city, nonprofit organization, or any other ISP can challenge. We will take that data in and we will be releasing tools to determine that factor so that we can open up those areas for BEAD funding. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the map. So you always want to make sure that this option is selected, not any technology. So by default, when you go into a map, it will always be any technology. So you want to select all wired and licensed fixed wireless. The reason we are selecting all wired and licensed fixed wireless because that's the reliable broadband delivery medium defined by US Department of Commerce as per the BEAD guideline, the $1 billion funding we have. Now, there are two tier here, speed tier. One is 25/3, which we all know is unserved, and then 100/20. So when I select 25/3 and close, I don't see any red dot in Buckeye. Probably one or two here and there. So anything you see red, definitely those are eligible. Those addresses are eligible for BEAD funding. However, if I go back to my fixed broadband setting and change it to 100/20, I still see everything pretty much green. So when you see that and you go back here on your provider list, you will be able to see who's providing the speed in your area. So seems like Cox Communication is providing 1 gig download service maximum and 35 Mbps upload speed. And there are a few other technologies here. However, anything related to satellite, you can always ignore them. Anything related to copper, you can ignore them too. Another satellite company, this is SpaceX, you can ignore them. Anything related to licensed fixed wireless, you have to consider them. So if it's meeting the threshold, then that community is definitely not eligible as of now today for BEAD funding. However, as I said, the challenge process can open up a lot of opportunity for these communities. We'll discuss more once we are done with the mapping. So that's for Buckeye. And let's go to the next community. I would try Colorado City. So this is Colorado City. So if I click on any address, as you already know that I selected a parameter, which is all wired and licensed fixed wireless and 100 by 20 to check the BEAD eligibility. So what I can see, there is a mix of green and red. I see that there is one company which is basically providing 1 gig symmetrical, 1 gig upload and 1 gig download through fiber services, which is South Central Utah Telephone Association. So anything you are seeing, anyone, whoever actually
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. It looks like we had some technical difficulties, but Sandeep should be coming back here shortly.
Sorry for the interruption. Again, as I was saying, that can you all see my screen?
No, we cannot.
Okay. Okay. So going back, yeah. Now you can all see my screen. In the Colorado City area, anything you see with the red marking are open for BEAD funding. So anyone applies for BEAD funding in this area, that can be the city itself or city in partnership with a private carrier, will be eligible to receive BEAD funding for these addresses to connect, to make sure these addresses has high speed internet connection. Anything green, which is already connected, definitely not eligible for BEAD funding. So let's move on to the next one, St. John's. Okay, so we're in St. John's. So if we take this parameter, we will make sure that we are selected all wired and licensed fixed wireless and selected the speed 100 by 20. We can see it's pretty much all red. So that means a massive portion of St. John's is definitely unserved or not served. As you can see, it's showing 0% coverage and eligible for BEAD funding. So that's how you can basically decide if your community is eligible for BEAD funding or not. So next one, city of Peoria. So let me check that. So as you can see, the massive portion of city of Peoria is already connected with high-speed connection from Cox. So unfortunately, city of Peoria, most probably as of today, is not going to be eligible for BEAD funding. But as one of the question was asked by Jared Morris from City of Tempe, he asked a question that if you have any knowledge about any household in your area which is probably claimed by any ISP that they're covering that with high-speed broadband over 100 and 120 by 10, but that's not the case in real life, definitely you would be able to submit a challenge process. So that's one. I would like to go back to St. John's as an example. So we can see that St. John's is eligible for BEAD funding. However, in year 2022, last year, we deployed $100 million through ARPA funding, and we are able to actually we are able to select 20 projects for our ARPA funding project, and this 20 project will cover high-speed broadband connection into at least 100,000 households. So St. John's was awarded a grant to cover all the St. John's household with high-speed broadband. So this process called deduplication. So also during this BEAD funding process or planning process, we'll make sure anywhere there is already a federal commitment or state commitment to build high-speed internet connectivity, we'll be taking those addresses off from the BEAD funding, because otherwise it will be overbuilding on top of each other using two sources of federal funding. So that this process called deduplication. So anything in your community, if already has a federal commitment or a state commitment, and you are getting served using those state dollars or federal dollars, then your community, even if it's eligible through BEAD funding, and it will get served before even BEAD money rolls out. So you will be served in that case. To give you an example, if for some reason 60% of your community is served by our ABDG grant, which we rolled out last year, and there is still 40% outskirt in the area, which was not covered because financially didn't make sense at that time, will be still you will still be eligible for BEAD funding for that 40% of the areas. Okay, Rimrock. Okay, so this is the Rimrock area. So as you can see, with the selected parameters of 100 by 20 and all wired and licensed fixed wireless services, Rimrock is eligible for BEAD funding. So whenever you have any question, definitely after the eligibility that who's providing internet here, you can always check the providers here. As I mentioned, do not consider satellite as a reliable broadband delivery. That's why it's very important to select that parameter called all wired and licensed fixed wireless, because satellites are not defined as a reliable broadband delivery as per the federal government. And this is unlicensed fixed wireless. So it doesn't matter how great unlicensed fixed wireless is performing in an area, it's still not a reliable broadband delivery as per Department of Commerce, who actually gave us the money. So we'll only consider licensed fixed wireless and fiber to home connection. Okay, let me go to the next one, Forest Lakes. So as you can see, I selected the same option here again. And with this selected option, it seems like there is a mixed bag situation here in Forest Lake. Some of the households are connected, some of them are not connected. Some of the households are served, some of the households are not served. So let's click on a served address and see who's providing internet, who's providing high-speed internet here. So seems like that Triad Wireless is providing a licensed fixed wireless with 300 Mbps download and 50 Mbps upload. That's why this household looks served, and the house next to it is unserved because Triad is here, but it's unlicensed fixed wireless. It's not licensed fixed wireless. That's why it's not being considered as served. Now, this is a unique situation, and this is a perfect example for the challenge process. As I keep mentioning challenge process, and which will be a 90-day window, which is going to open up next year, somewhere between February to March, and then it will go on for three months, consecutive months. The way it will work, we will receive the challenge, and before even I jump into this challenge process, we talked about this in our last webinar. The challenge process will be a portal developed by State Broadband Office. The city officials, county officials, ISPs, nonprofit will be able to sign up through that portal and submit challenge using our own data. So you are definitely responsible for submitting that challenge. However, the massive amount of data which you need to submit that challenge, like speed test data, latency data, will mostly be provided by us. And then also you can conduct your own survey on your side in the community and upload those as a challenge document too. So we are hoping to organize a multiple webinar to basically help our local government to understand how to submit a challenge process. So that will be the whole tool and everything will be part of that webinar. But in a nutshell, that challenge process will allow you to basically submit a challenge. The reason I'm using Forest Lake as an example, this is a very unique situation. As you can see, some of the address, probably 10 or 20% of the address in Forest Lake is basically claimed by a wireless company, claiming that they are providing licensed fixed wireless. Also, any surrounding area is not. So this is definitely, from my background in broadband, I can tell this is a capacity issue. That means the equipment they have in nearby area, which is claiming to serve few of the addresses in this whole block, is probably can only handle certain amount of funding, a certain amount of households. What's the issue with this thing? So suppose in future a ISP comes into this area, apply for BEAD funding in partnership with Forest Lake city officials or town officials or county, and they are connecting all these households, which is red dotted, but they won't be able to, by law, because IIJ, Infrastructure and Job Act, is a bill, they won't be able to connect these households in the green dot. Why? Because that's what basically the guideline says, that if it's served, we are not been able to deploy BEAD funding in this area. So during the challenge process, if you can put together enough evidence, which again, as I said, that will be a completely separate discussion and webinar, and we'll train you how to submit that challenge process, then we'll be able to take these green addresses off from the map to make sure whenever a fiber to home provider is coming in this area, they're basically covering all these addresses with fiber to home, not leaving this green one behind because they cannot connect it or we cannot give them funding. So that's one of the example I definitely wanted to use for future challenge purposes. Okay, so the next one would be Cottonwood. Okay, so with today's map, as far as I can see, Cottonwood is served using the cable one or Sparklight connectivity. So if there is anything outside of Cottonwood which is not served, and it will be eligible for BEAD funding. But from the map, it seems like Cottonwood and the surrounding area already have high-speed broadband connection through Sparklight. We got a question: do individual homeowner or renter have to apply for BEAD funding directly? No, actually, no one has to apply for BEAD funding directly as a individual level. So state, we are basically going to roll out the BEAD funding in a project based area basis. So we are hoping at this point, as I don't want to comment on the project areas right now because we are still going through the planning process. But the vision at this point is divide the whole state. We have 15 counties, divide the whole state into 20-25 project areas, like based on the geography, and basically put those project areas up for grab. And cities and counties can partner up with a private ISPs to submit a BEAD application for that whole project area. The counties and cities or local government can directly apply for BEAD funding. That's an option too. So you can be owner of your own municipal network. The ISPs can directly come for the BEAD funding without any support from the cities. There are different kind of evaluation criteria in the grant evaluation. One of the most important evaluation criteria they mentioned in the criterias is definitely the financial piece of it. So anyone who's the BEAD funding requires 25% matching need to be provided by cities or counties or the ISPs, anyone who's the main applicant here. So in this case, anyone who's coming forward with the most amount of matching will get this grant. Of course, there are other factors, but finance is definitely the most important factor here. So to give you all a feelings, so the 318,000 household I mentioned in the beginning of the call, which is basically determined by FCC, will be using this $1 billion to make sure that we are providing connectivity in those all 318,000 households here in the state. So that's why it's very important to look at the map, and we want to make sure that you are understanding and you can determine by yourself if your city is eligible for BEAD funding or not. And definitely feel free to reach out to us if you feel like someone's ISP said that they're covering your area, but in real life that's not the case. We'll be happy to walk you through, but that's what the challenge process is for, and which will be open next year to make sure that we are not leaving behind any community. We got a question that we, Bullhead City, are interested in installing fiber line all over our city parks and also key public safety infrastructure. Does this qualify under grant program? If so, which funding program is most applicable? So as of today, I'm not aware if there is any grant program out there which will be basically your best shot to connect your city parks and public safety infrastructure. But one thing I would say that we recently published our BEAD initial plan volume 1. So the volume 1 basically defines that how many unserved and underserved addresses we have here in the state, and list of those broadband serviceable location ID. And one of the main thing is the Community Anchor Institute. So we recently released a Community Anchor Institute list, and that plan was just published a few days ago. You can always go read that plan and provide your feedback if we are missing any Community Anchor Institute. Public safety infrastructure was one of our Community Anchor Institute category, public safety buildings. So if we can cover all our unserved and underserved households with this $993 million, less than that, rest of the money will most probably go towards the Community Anchor Institute. In that case, there might be a high chance that the public safety infrastructure will be connected using the BEAD funding. But however, as I said before, the priority is unserved and underserved location. But great question out there. I would request my colleague Parla to post on the chat box about the BEAD initial plan, so that you can go have a look. And also the 5-year action plan is also posted on the same link. So you can go have a look and basically read the plan, check the Community Anchor Institute list, and provide us your feedback. One of the questions someone asked that, please, am I correct that in order to apply for BEAD funding, it has to be under licensed fixed wireless or WED? Yes, that's our vision at this point. Anything, of course, we want to make sure that we are covering everything with BEAD, with fiber to home, but fiber is expensive. We talked about that into our first webinar. So going to every single household in this 318,000 list is definitely impossible to connect them with all of them with fiber, because of the cost of deployment can go really higher. In some cases, we have found address here in Arizona which can cost up to $250,000, just one address to connect. So it's going to be a mixed bag. So probably 70% fiber, 30%, 20% fixed wireless, and 10% we don't know. There are areas here in Arizona which is very hard to even connect with fixed wireless or any kind of wireless solution. We might go back, especially in the tribes, we might go back to satellite at some point for those areas. As you know, we are liable to connect all these households with high-speed broadband. So we don't know yet, and that's what exactly the plan will define. Jared got a question. Under the most optimistic circumstance, when the BEAD funding will be first available? Great question, Jared. So to recap the whole timeline, there are three major milestones we need to hit before we deploy BEAD funding. Number one is the 5-year action plan. So 5-year action plan, we completed this milestone and submitted that to US Department of Commerce, and it was published on our webpage on August 22nd. My colleague just posted a link. You can click on that link and you will find the 5-year action plan kind of like middle of that page. The second milestone is initial plan, which is due on December 27th. Initial plan has two different volumes, volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 1 was published a few days ago on ACO website. Volume 1, I want to repeat this again. Volume 1 requires your feedback. It's open for public comment for next 30 days. So please read it, provide us your feedback. If we are missing it, it has an attachment of Community Anchor Institute in that with that plan. Download that list and make sure that we are not missing any Community Anchor Institute from your community. So that's why your feedback is very important. You can directly email it to us along with a form we have uploaded in our website. You can directly submit a comment through the feedback portal we have installed on the website, and you can directly email it to us. So there are multiple ways to submit your comment. The volume 2 is getting published on November 1st or beginning of November, and will be open for whole November for public comment. The reason volume 2, and I would like to highlight the most important part where local government officials can really help us with volume 2, is the sub-grantee selection process. So we will basically lay out the scoring criteria that how we'll be selecting this project. Your letter of recommendation carries a value. So I would highly recommend you to make sure that read that document and provide us your feedback so that we can integrate your visions into our statewide broadband plan too. So after submitting the initial plan in December, we'll start working on the final plan. The final plan is due in December 2024. So almost 1 year from here. Once we submit the final plan, we'll be opening up the grant opportunity. So to give or take, I don't see ourselves opening up any grant opportunity before 2025, beginning of 2025. Does anyone have any question regarding the mapping? I can still answer any question regarding the mapping. Otherwise, I can switch to our website and show you where the plans are posted. One of the question Jared has, will small communities be eligible for funding? For example, Tempe has a pocket of eligible location like mobile home parks. So, Jared, it depends. So if you go onto the FCC map, and you type the address and you see that whole, there are multiple ways, actually 2 different ways FCC defined the whole mobile home park situation. For some of the mobile home parks, they actually defined, if those are like kind of movable mobile home park, not actually temporary permanent mobile home park, they define them as one address. So basically what we are seeking from the ISP is that they will bring in fiber and they will drop the fiber right outside of mobile home park, and the park itself will be responsible for connecting those households with high-speed broadband connectivity. Now, when I say that, the way it can be determined, if you go to that address and see all the mobile home parks are defined as, defined as a separate address in the FCC map, then it's eligible for BEAD funding separately. If it's defined as one, so I can tell all over the nation, the MDUs, multi-dwelling units are all defined as one address. So in any cases, when we are connecting an apartment, they are basically just connecting the premise with high-speed internet, and then from there, the apartment will be a contract execution probably between ISP and the apartment owners or the corporation. So it's a tricky question, but the simple answer is yes. If you see that into the FCC map as an individual address, it is eligible for BEAD funding as an individual address. If you see only one address, it will be connected. The premise will have a high-speed fiber connection, and we'll go from there. Hey, having saying that, I will switch to our website just to show you all where the plans are posted, and make sure that you have enough resources on your end to respond to our plan or provide us your feedback. So this is where the plans are posted. As I said, the first milestone was 5-year action plan. So here is the 5-year action plan. The 5-year action plan does not require any public feedback. However, it's good to have your feedback. So read the 5-year action plan. Let us know if you have any question. You can always reach out to us at broadband@azcommerce.com. We'll post the email address in the chat box. But this is the first milestone, 5-year action plan. And this is the first part of the second milestone, which is the initial proposal. So in the initial proposal, volume 1, we outlined the existing broadband funding here in Arizona. Means different kind of broadband funding came from federal government all over in last few years. The list of locations designated as unserved or underserved in the FCC national map, and Arizona's Community Anchor Institute defined by National Telecommunication and Information Administration, NTIA, for the BEAD challenge process. So when you click on this link, that will let you read the whole plan. The Community Anchor Institute list is right here. So if you download this list, and you can go basically category by category, that what we added as a Community Anchor Institute list, we added schools, colleges, libraries, public safety facilities, local government official buildings, state government official buildings, and also different other categories. So public health centers, hospital, any community anchor institute, anything which has public gatherings was added in the list category by category as a community anchor institute. So you would be able to see those in that list as an address, as an latitude and longitude. So feel free to take a look, make sure that we did not miss any schools, libraries, colleges, health center from your community. If we did miss it, please make sure you are sending us that information so that we can add. There are a few ways you can provide us your feedback. One, you can basically download this PDF, write your comment, and upload it here in this PDF feedback form. So basically you fill out all this information, write your comment. You can select which comments, which section you are submitting the comment about, select any additional document and submit. It will directly come to us, or you can download the same PDF, fill it out, and directly email to broadband@azcommerce.com. The public comment period for volume 1 will end on November 1, 2023. Please share your feedback before that. It's very important that you have a look and let us know if there is anything you want us to include into this BEAD initial plan volume 1. Any question regarding volume 1 or 5-year action plan? Eric has a question. When will the 5-year plan be updated to include all the local government survey results? So great question, Eric. So the local government survey was sent to mostly the county officials because we completed the county webinars little earlier than the city and Leagues of Cities webinars. So what I would say that we started receiving some of those counties' feedback as part of this government survey result. And we are thinking of updating the plan next year at some point, like give it a refresh look. It's not going to be a major update or something. However, as we are completing, and today is our final webinar with Leagues of Cities, we will send out the survey to the Leagues of Cities officials, and they will distribute the survey from there. Once you start fill out the survey, send it back to them, we will start integrating those data into the 5-year action plan. And some of those data might get reflected into the initial plan volume 2 as well. So yes, once we send this thing, we're hoping to close it as soon as possible. The ideal time would be before November 30th. We still haven't selected any date yet, but in some cases, if you need more time, feel free to reach out to us. Any cities need a little bit more guidance, we'd be happy to help you with that. Also, at the same time, we will be posting the link of the survey right now. Let me find the survey link instead of email it to everyone. We are going to email it to everyone anyway, but I want to make sure that you have the access. Here we go. So it's on the same link. If you just scroll down a little bit more right after the BEAD 5-year action plan, you will see an option called local government survey. So you can directly click on the survey, take the survey, or there is a PDF version available. So you can fill out the whole PDF version and directly email it to us at broadband@azcommerce.com. Any other questions? Um, will ACA, Eric, you posted a new question. Will ACA require local government coordination? Knowing the NTI does not require local coordination, but will the ACA requires letter of support? Yes, it's very important for us to make sure that the ISP who's applying for the BEAD funding has the local government support. Again, the scoring criteria, which will be released as part of volume 2, we definitely need your feedback there, because that will get finalized based on your feedback. We'll have a scoring portion from for the ISPs who has a local government support, meaning letter of support from the communities, counties, cities. That definitely creates some extra value in the proposals, and we want to make sure that any company who's applying for this BEAD funding is locally supported. And that has consequences, because if we don't have your support, the permitting process, it's very important. The BEAD program has a timeline. We have to build this network within a certain timelines. So if you are not in alignment with that particular organization who's applying for BEAD funding, then the vision doesn't match, and the permitting will definitely be an issue going forward. So we always make sure that we are eliminating this factor. So that's why local governments support here in Arizona. I don't know about any other state, but for Arizona, it's very, very important. So we will take your letter of support very, very critically, and I think it will carry a lot of value into the evaluation process. So someone asked a question, if not sure if it was already covered, but do ISP qualify for BEAD funding if they use unlicensed fixed wireless? As of today, as per the guideline from federal government, the answer to that question would be no. We'll be only funding fiber or cable or any wired connection to the household and licensed fixed wireless.
You have the ability to unmute yourself as you see that your hand is up. If you saw the question, you can unmute yourself to ask.
Any other additional questions? Thank you, Victoria, for attending these webinars. So we'll most probably conclude today's webinar here. Again, if you have any question, directly feel free to reach out to us, and we will be and we'll be able to help you with any question, any information you need. Having saying that, these webinars, this is just a phase. We'll be hosting many more webinars going forward. And also we are kicking off a county and city outreach program pretty soon. We are working on a schedule. So very soon we'll be reaching out to you. We're going to every single county, major cities, to make sure we are talking to the city officials, county officials directly face to face, and also hosting a town hall to make sure that we are letting people or updating people, the communities and the citizens, residents, about our initiative, how broadband, they will have high-speed broadband connectivity in near future. So there are multiple activities coming on our way. We'll be needing your help. We'll be needing your support to execute those. So thank you again for your help. We'll be in touch, and any question you have, if you need to discuss something as a community, directly feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help set up a meeting and answer all of your questions regarding your community. Thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you have any question.